Hey, Akshay,
How you doing?
doing well.
Hi everybody. So we're going to talk about AI today. Um, Seems like it's been on top of everybody's mind these days, whether or not we want it. um, and we'll also be talking a little bit about LLMs and agents and how what that means for logistics and supply chain. Um, so maybe we can start by the AI as a buzzword is being thrown around a lot, even to an extreme where um, companies are just frivolously using it on their landing page, like, "Hey, this is AI, automated this,
Yeah,
AI-driven SDRs, or automated marketing, or this and that." And I think it doesn't really say much, right?
yeah.
About like just by adding AI, because I think it means is it's a moving target and it's constantly changing. So maybe we start by like what's going on, like why is you know what is this inflection point over the last 2 years? This has become a big thing. AI, quote unquote, or a set of technologies related to AI are not new, right?
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
there is something that's newer, and so maybe we start there. So, LLMs, large language models, is what we were talking about, and the kind of the big inflection point was about just over 2 years ago when OpenAI released ChatGPT, which made it really easy for everybody to see the power of large language models.
Hmm.
Do you want to attempt to kind of describe and kind of do the mom test of what is
Oh
the
my
large language models?
God. I've tried explaining it to my mom and failed. um, I mean,
Speaking of which, I'm reading
there's,
the book. Oh, I don't have it.
there's
Sorry.
I mean, there's a technical explanation which maybe isn't that helpful, and then there's the sort of the nice thing about ChatGPT and what OpenAI did when they released that as an experiment is oh, I get this. Along a large language model. Well, first of all, what do we mean by model? In AI, a model is a piece of software that represents something, and you give it inputs about the state of something. Like, for example, in an image recognition model, like there's a camera, you give an input, it's looking at a container, and then it gives you a kind of output. You're looking at this kind of container, it's a 40 foot, and here's the number. That might be one example of a model. It's trained to recognize containers. You get shown lots of pictures of trainers, and it starts to understand that. So in the case of an LLM, it's trained on text. It's large language, lots of text. So you give it all this text, and it starts to understand text and be able to say, based on this kind of text input, to be conversational like the GPT models, I think you want this kind of output. I can't claim to understand the magic of how this actually works at technical level, but you give it enough and you do enough tricks, and even though it's not really thinking, the essential um, experience from our perspective is wow, like I'm asking it a question and it knows what I'm referring to and it's bringing relevant facts and it's answering the thing I asked about, not something else, and so on. Or I'm asking it to reduce some text, it's looking at all that text and it's pulling out the key points and condensing it, and so on
Right.
and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually like a lot like our brains, right? Like when I prompted you, what do you think is the large language model? It's similar to, like I asked you that question, which is a prompt, and when we ask a question, ChatGPT, we're prompting it, and the first word that came out is your brain generating that based on everything it knows, all your lived experience that you've had, whether reading things, you know, doing things, and I mean ChatGPT is nowhere near as efficient or debatably as intelligent in some regards as our brain, but it is much superior in some other ways because it's trained on significantly more data than any human,
Could
right?
ever read in a lifetime,
Ever
yeah.
read. Um, and it's constantly learning. I mean, you basically need to give it more compute for it to, and more data for it to learn more and more. Now, that doesn't mean like it becomes smarter, and that's, I think, the challenge that the industry is trying to overcome, is like, how do you actually make it efficient and smarter by just giving it more information? But anyways, we're going too deep into it. I'm curious, you know, and a lot of people have used LLMs. How do you think? What's been your aha moments? Like, using LLM, how do you think um, it's been helpful in your day to day?
That's a great question.
And are you using it?
Yeah, I use it in work. I use it in personal life. I use it in so many different ways now. And it's been really interesting because at first I'd be like, yeah, I'll make myself try this thing because I should know about it, and okay, I'll have it open so I remember to use it. As it just gets better and better and better, it's just like it's becoming the default. I should just prompts. I've got the app on my phone. I've got it on my computer. Some of the aha moments. And I don't even know where to begin because there's so many examples, and I don't remember which the first ones were. Where I was like, "Wow, I should really use this more." They've gotten so good at synthesizing knowledge. So when I have technical questions, when I have kind of business-related questions, like before this call, I was interested in, how the change in like productivity versus manpower has changed in agriculture because I was thinking about, kind of some kind of similes to AI and logistics. I know I could go Google and find that information and get the answer. I can ask the exact questions I want, see the table, see the sources, and here's specifically what you're asking for. And that takes approximately, 3 seconds. Like that would have taken me at least 3 minutes, if not longer, searching the web, even though that information is available. So the speed at which it can do research for you is kind of breathtaking. Would be one example of how I use it frequently. Let me know if you want more, but that's definitely one.
Yeah, I had obviously just like you many aha moments, and I keep having them because the models keep evolving. Um, but I think the one that's kind of stuck with me is a very simple one, which is I cook sometimes, and I'm excited about a recipe, and it has different methods, right? Like use a pressure cooker, or use an oven, or this and that. Um, and I want to switch whether it's an ingredient or whether it's a method. Um, and I would just, I would first give it a recipe, and then I would ask like, hey, what are good sides to go with it? Um, and then I'm like, hey, I wanna like use my steam oven instead of like doing it on the stove.
You know,
And the based on the ingredients and the recipe, it gives very specific instructions on how to use the steam oven for what ingredients went, right?
mm-hmm.
So that is, I think, where, because if I didn't have that, I would be like kind of make, I would copy the recipe with steam oven on Google and like find some derivative of that recipe that somebody has done created, and then I kind of make an assum- make an ass- you know make an assumption of like, okay, maybe I should do it this way, and then try it. In this case, it just like told me to do this. Now, it can be wrong, just like we
Sure.
can be wrong, right? Because if it has garbage, it can hallucinate, and just like humans say incorrect things or alternative facts. So you have to be careful. I mean, worst case is like you try the recipe perfectly and based on instruction, and is it going to taste good? Is the real test, right?
Cooking's a really interesting example. I also use it all the time when I cook, which is mostly on the weekends. And you can think about like, hey, if you'd been cooking for like 10 years and you cooked every day and you knew all the methods, you wouldn't need ChatGPT, right? But like based on like our limited experience, like it gives you a leg up incredibly quickly. But on the other hand, you still need to know a little bit. If you didn't know like how to use a knife to cut vegetables, or like where does the lid go on this pressure, if you were just like I've never been in the kitchen, there's only so much you can do. But the degree to which it can take kind of like novices in an area, like you and I in cooking, and just be like, I want to try this thing, but I'm not sure, and it's like boom, you're off to the races, like trying things. It's very it really kind of just helps you level up so much faster in the things you're willing to try and experiment with.
Yeah, one more example I'll give is like logistics and supply chain related, work related, which is when we hire new people and we're trying to ramp them up on the domain,
Hmm.
I actually like to collaborate with ChatGPT while I am. So, the specific example would be is customs. I think the ChatGPT is trained on an entire U.S. Customs HS code data set and rulebook. So you could be like, hey, I have this water bottle and I want to import this into the United States from China. Can you break down like the HS codes and and it approximates based on like if you give it the photo of it, it will approximate how
Hmm.
much plastic or different materials it might or make assumptions and then kind of break it down. So that's like, I mean, I don't even think it was possible for unless you are a certified customs broker because as soon as you go to the rule book, you would be like, I'm going to give up,
Yep.
right? And so there are, I think, that things that are possible if you're not trained on it, that you can actually get the answer and understand how it got to that answer, right?
Yep. And let's
Effectively.
say you are a customs broker and you've been doing it for 20 decades and you have all that email correspondence asking your customers, hey, can you give me some details about what kind of thing this is you're importing? And then you have his CHS code you picked over time. You could very easily give that information to ChatGPT or similar things and say, hey, make me an agent based on my own data set and what you know about the HS codes to be even more specific and accurate than the generally available information.
Right. Now, I think a lot of folks, are exposed to something like a Chat GPT or even Google's Gemini or Perplexity or what have you, which is a nice tool. But there's also what's happening under the hood, right? That engineers that are using these in a technical way to integrate this into the applications.
Right.
So in that regard, let's kind of open the discussion up to what do what are use cases in supply chain and logistics that you are seeing, that are kind of like in front of us, um, where there's an opportunity now to automate them or leverage LLMs. Maybe we start there. Yeah, I'm curious what you think. How could a company like Terminal 49 or other or a freight forwarder or a cargo owner, how could they leverage LLM in their applications
I mean,
or
you
even
got,
in their work?
yeah, if you want to talk within applications specifically, there are a bunch of different kind of use cases that LLMs do very well. So here's what you might consider a trivial example. We have spent much time taking data from websites and saying, what kind of container is this? And sometimes shipping line websites will give you the ISO code of the container, and we can say with total certainty, like, hey, it's this kind of thing. And much of the time, they've got their own description, and sometimes we mess it up. And I and others, we've spent hours and hours like building this expert system where we're hard coding all the enumeration of possibilities of like this must be a such and such type of container. That's the perfect case for an LLM. Hey, I'm looking at this description of a container. Can you tell me what kind of container it is? It may make some mistakes sometimes, but it's probably going to be just as good or you or I looking at something and making some smart assumptions based on the text or description it's seeing. So over time, you plug that in with an API. Hey, I've got this description of a container, like output it as a, one of these types of container, width, height, type, and so on.
Right. So I guess what you're saying is you have, you know, a blob of data or even a document, right? Um, Description of a container is basically a small set of text of words and then a
Mm-hmm.
document, structure and a bunch of words. And I mean, a very simple use case could be just to classify things, right? As you're
Mm-hmm.
describing. Um,
Yeah, that was a baby example. Like in your document example, here's a document. Like, what is it? Oh, that's a commercial invoice. Oh, that's a bill of lading. Oh, that's a release. That's even so on. Yeah.
right. Yeah, and I think a lot of folks, you know, are a little bit pessimistic that how accurate it is. And,
Hmm.
what we're seeing is simpler use cases are nearly perfect in terms of how well they work, right? And I say nearly is because humans are not perfect either, right?
That's right.
Um, and I don't think you need to be perfect. You just need to be good enough,
That's
or
right.
close to perfect. Good enough sometimes maybe doesn't work. If you're analyzing invoices, you don't want to mess up the invoice amount due, or even the line items. But document extraction has been there for a while, before even 2 years ago. But with this technology, a lot of the existing workloads are showing really incredible results.
Yeah. I think it's a relevant one to logistics. Like you say, we've always had document extraction, but there was lots of training, and you need to give it lots of examples. Then, if those documents start varying too much, you see a higher error rate. LLMs, you literally just throw whatever you have at it, and it doesn't matter how it's formatted. It's using that kind of language based and understanding magic it has just to make sense of it and categorize the data within.
Yeah, and I think like the trick that's happened is, sometimes like you might misspeak like a word,
Hmm.
but I understand what you're trying to
From the
say
context. Yeah.
from the context. And that's the same thing that's happening,
Yeah.
right? It's not looking at what you're saying literally, but it like looks at all of the words in a document, and then it's like, oh, okay, there's probably that word probably is out of place, but I'll just kind of ignore it.
Yeah.
I kind of know what what document is trying to say. It is a commercial invoice. It is definitely a bill of lading because it mostly looks like a bill of lading. Um,
It's
so I,
interesting you brought up the question of like, it can make mistakes. Like, do you feel that's an objection or concern you hear a lot? Because, as you and I know, looking at kind of stuff moving and like all of the documents, like mistakes are rampant. Like it's really easy for there to be errors when the amount of copying and pasting and manual entry across the supply chain today already. Like that's the status quo.
yeah, I think it's natural,
Yeah.
right? It's a natural human reaction to not fully trust a new tool,
Hmm.
um, especially when it's hyped up, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think, and I think it's actually good to be critical,
Hmm.
and somewhat pessimistic about how well something is going to work until it really works over and over again.
Hmm.
So it's our job, or the tool builder's job, to really prove its value, not once but like 100 times.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and it's doing a lot, right? We are saying there's a quote unquote magic happening between the inputs and the outputs, and so I think people are have a higher degree of mistrust, especially when they see an hallucination or a false answer, or they might just like, you know, they might not like how it's responding, and they might be. Um, Also, it could be as there is a little bit of anxiety as well. It's like it is magically doing a lot.
Hmm.
I was doing that before,
Hmm.
right? Or I had a bunch of people in my team that was doing it before. Well, now
Hmm.
this can do it, and it kind of like does it pretty well. Like, what does that mean for me? So it opens a whole set of questions around, you know, um, the work that people do, how they do it, how long it takes for it to be done, how well it's done, how many people it takes to do a specific kind of work. I'm being vague because it applies to a lot of different types of work, not just logistics,
Yes.
right? I mean, we're in a completely different area. We're talking about legal work, being most types of legal work, like contract analysis, or you know, um, questions to a paralegal that you
Hmm.
might spend $500 an hour for. A lot of that could be automated, and it is actually being automated right now by a set of
Hmm.
companies. So I know we're going in a little bit of tangent, but yeah, it'll be interesting over the next 5, 10 years. How um, there's two ways to look at it. How is I'm like a glass half full guy, right? So I look at it like, how is it going? How can I use this to better myself and better my work, right?
Hmm.
How do I get leverage? Similar to, I don't have a hammer. I can't I can't like put up that,
My options are limited for what I
my
can
options are
do.
limited. Like I'm gonna
Hmm.
have to use like, a pan or something to hammer that nail. Probably not a good tool. Or have to hire a plumber to hammer the things in the wall.
Hmm.
Now I have like a perfect hammer, right? And it works every single time. I've saved like hundreds of dollars hiring somebody else, let alone like a lot of time because I don't even have to think about it. I just use it. So similar things are going to happen. Um, if people are averse to the technology, I think it's going to hurt them more than it's going to help them.
I
Um,
agree. I think there's a whether you find it scary or an opportunity, like we've seen this play out in other industries in other times, and the result is always towards greater automation and optimization because it makes everything cheaper. And assuming we're in a mercantile economic situation, like that's always going to win out.
right.
I was asking ChatGPT about agriculture, and in the 1990s, 30 years ago, there were a third more farmers than there are today, for the per hectare. So we've reduced the workforce by a third in that aspect of agriculture, and we have roughly the same number of hectares as we did in the 90s of farmland, and it's producing 40% more. So that's like automation, technology being applied in multiple different ways. Speaking of AI, the tractors they use can cost up to $1 million, and they have machine vision and AI running, and they are like dialing in every aspect of how every seed gets planted.
That's impressive.
Um, yeah.
Do you think it's going to continue that trend and even accelerate or slow down?
So within agriculture, like once you like realize, oh, like humans do this, but there's this or this, but we can get it like you reach a point where you get the acceleration, then it tapers off again. And then you need new breakthroughs of like, oh, well, now we've got a new way of bioengineering or what have you. So there's limits to what you can do within the paradigm. You can think of it similarly in logistics at like terminals, right? Terminals that are fully adopted automation and they have all the robots and everything. Like there's an efficiency, and they can be 50 to 100% more efficient in their throughput than like the worst run terminals of a similar size you might compare them to. At the end of the day, you can only move like 50,000 tons of container so quickly, safely in the physical world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's do like a rapid fire of use cases, right? Let's go wide in logistics because I think there's a lot. Um, I mean, the terminal is a good example, right? Like you see, this just came up to me as you were talking about it. Truckers want to know gate times,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or they want to know like how is the line looking at the terminal. So thankfully, a lot of terminals have cameras,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they open their phone and they look at the camera. They're like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. Maybe 20 trucks in. Next they look at it is like, and so they're opening the camera. It's probably not even safe, right? Like they're doing it on their phone. Thankfully, they're driving slowly, maybe in the line. But with something like an operator, which is the new model with ChatGPT, and there's a couple other ones that it it kind of acts like an agent. So you can tell it like, hey, go look at all the cameras in LA Long Beach. Actually, go look at a specific camera because I need to go return the container at Tray Pack. And you're having your coffee, and then every 5 minutes is like it analyzes the video and it tells you there's exactly how many trucks are in the line. It even better, it tells you like most likely you should go at this time because there will be like the line will be shorter. And now there's one specific thing that's happened, right? Typically, you would expect the terminal to build this technology for you.
That's right. Some do, but not all do. Not all will. Well, they'll take
Now the
time.
power is moved to the user, right?
Yeah.
They can actually use these tools to go out and get the answers on their behalf, either having coffee or feeding their kid.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just a very small example. And I think you kind of see the proliferation of this technology on both sides, users and the providers of services. And you kind of dial up the use of this tool, you see massive innovation happening. Well, let's go down the path of
Yeah.
more use cases.
Here's one for you. You're looking at your shipment. You're importing it. You think everything's in order. Wouldn't it be great if someone just went and double checked every single one individually, page by page by page, and told you if it saw anything amiss for you, anything that's like might be worth double checking. You could go do that, but you'd get pretty bored pretty quickly, or you could have an LLM do that and then say, hey, go take a look at these five. I think there may be some small issues around X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That's like kind of bread and butter work for LLMs.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just take the pickup and delivery use case.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that need to happen. They need to happen in a sequence, right?
Yep.
And multiple parties are involved.
Yeah.
So most people are extravagant email coordinators, right? They're like, what do I need to do today? Oh, the container's arriving tomorrow. Did I issue the delivery order to the trucker? Wait, who is the trucker for this terminal? Oh wait, is the container clear? Like, is there a customs hold or freight hold? Oh, there's a customs hold. I should email the customs broker. They might not have what's going on there, right? So all these things, all these set of actions need to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And you might use a tool like Terminal 49 to kind of answer all those questions today. Oh, it's arrived. Or Terminal 49 will actually just tell you which ones to dispatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to dispatch. And sure, you might have a better tool that generates the delivery order, but then you still have to hit send. Oh, okay. Some take an email, some take, so I have to send it by EDI. Then you need to get a confirmation for the trucker. Then you're checking if it's made an appointment. So now, like this entire use case, or even portions of it, you could start automating. I mean, let's imagine a future state. And we can use Terminal 49 as an example. We already know a lot about who your truckers are, who your freight forwarder is, who your customs broker is, if you're working with you as a cargo owner. We know the details of your shipment and containers. We absolutely know where the movements are and what's happened. So automatically, we can generate the delivery order with the right trucking company, as well as, we might be giving our little bit secret sauce, but it doesn't matter. As well as where the trucker needs to go, as well as the opening and closing hours, as well as the right time to go. And then the trucker, we ping the trucker. We're like, hey, what are the times that you want to pick up the container, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe this is the first time, and they're like, okay, hey, mornings between 10 a.m. to 12, Tuesday between this and that. So let's say, and then the Terminal 49 is like, thank you. We will make a call with the warehouse and get an appointment. So Terminal 49 launches an agent, audio agent, right? And mm-hmm. It calls the warehouse. No integration required. Like, we're just doing what humans would typically do. And it has a conversation with the warehouse manager to set an appointment. And it's the technology has gone as good that the warehouse agent won't even know that it's not a real human. And it doesn't matter as long as the agent is doing the job really well, right? And the warehouse manager is like, you know what? I want to do Wednesday at 3 p.m. That's the only hour left. And so there's maybe a 1 hour overlap. So the voice agent's like, all right, that most likely will work, but let me confirm with the trucker. Mm-hmm. Immediately sends a text message to confirm. Trucker's like, that'll work. Sends it back and updates the system, and then updates the cargo owner and the freight forwarder, right? So there's a lot going on here. You can see an email coordinator agent, you can see a scheduling agent, you can see an agent that pulls out data, and then an agent that makes sure the trucker is going to the appointment, or agent that makes sure it's making an appointment with the terminal. And now you multiply this, right, by the number of containers you're moving. You've saved a lot of time. And if the agent runs into an exception, they can always involve the human, right? Because humans like are good at exception management. They're good at like figuring out the answer and reacting to problems in real time. So, and sometimes then bots might not be able to do that. So I think if we kind of extrapolate that use case, you can apply that to pretty much any kind of workload in logistics. As long as you have the information, it can probably be automated.
That's pretty exciting. How long until that's reality?
I think that's a good question, right? I think about this as a step level. I kind of painted a picture of extreme automation over there, where many different dimensions of automation is happening. Multimodal, right? We're talking about email, voice, document extraction, right? So there has to be a lot of technology that needs to be built. A lot of companies are building different pieces, and it's about tying these things together and making them work, right? So I mean, I think we'll start seeing examples of this in this year.
Yeah.
There are a couple companies that are working on, some types of like quoting automation or scheduling automation, but putting all of this together, in 3 years, I can see early adopters like freight forwarders using this. And I would say it this way: in 3 to 5 years, people might be like, "How are we working like in any other way before?"
I think your time horizons are too long. Let's check back in 2 weeks and see what's changed.
All right. Yeah. I only say 3 to 5 years is because people take time to adopt technology, right? Our platform, the way it is, was basically there for 3 years ago or even 2 years ago. But, we still see a lot of people adopting Terminal 49 or similar tools today for the first time.
That was a good chat, Akshay. I think we should do another one on AI and maybe pick some different use cases, or even, perhaps talk to some customers and see how they're using it.
Sounds good. Good to chat with you, Matt.
All right. Take care.
Bye.